We have our panelists here in studio with us, and of course we wanted to look at the current state of play as far as politics is concerned. Allow me to introduce them to you. Earlier on, I introduced to you the global leader of Kenya Diaspora Alliance. This is Dr. Shem Ochodo. Also, we do have with us this morning Jared Kello, who is the member of parliament from, I forget again. Nyando. Yes. Okay. My silent moment is showing. Also, we do have with us Okongo Mogini, senator from Nyamira. We do have with us Alice Wahome. She is a member of parliament from Kandara. Also, we do have with us, that is Samuel Pogisio, who is a member of parliament, that is a senator from West Pokot. Good morning, gentlemen and lady.
Morning.
Right, maybe we can get clarification from Alice Wahome on this particular story, because it seems, yes, the editing there was not very complete as far as, you said maybe the impeachment should be done what?
The impeachment should be withdrawn or be brought on, eh?
Withdrawn or brought on.
Whichever way.
Whichever way.
Yeah, but I was saying that it should be withdrawn because we can't on one hand be saying that we are building bridges, we are doing handshaking, and on the other hand, then we are attempting to impeach the presidency. Yes, yeah. May I also clarify that I'm the member of parliament for Kandara.
For Kandara.
Not from Kandara, because it means there could be another one from Kandara. I'm the member of parliament for.
Thank you. There's a good correction there on the preposition.
Thank you, Dibal,
for and not from.
Here.
Thank you. Okay, let's just get also granular with the politics of the day as far as this is concerned, because it seems from what they're saying that they're not people who turn on their decision. This is according to Governor Waititu. I don't know if I can express it verbatim the way he actually said it. That what did he say? That we're people who are focused, so we don't change tone along the way.
Yeah, I think Waititu was coming from the position that during the campaigns from 2013, and also joined by the next general election 2017, we did have a campaign that was intertwined, that was having the president and his deputy as one campaign and one team.
Yes.
And there were a lot of promises about the development of the nation, entire nation, but also there was the issue that after the 10 years of His Excellency the President, then we would. And I think he was not just talking about the Mount Kenya region, he was speaking to his voters. They were speaking to their voters that they then would actually, but for Mount Kenya, Waititu is talking about us being the lead in terms of our presidency.
But why
because we had a candidate, so that we don't want as a region to appear like we say this today and tomorrow we change tune. And we are known for consistency. Even when things were bad, even when we said we'll be in the opposition during the Moi era,
right,
we remained consistent irrespective of the fact that there was huge attempt to actually put the region under Kanu.
Jared, we can see also the DP is calling Right Honorable Raila Odinga, of course, a wolf in sheep's or in sheep clothing. That is what we have on the front page of Esther as well. And of course, also, throwing in the Bible, quoting a verse from the Bible as well. What is your reaction on this? As far as, the handshake is concerned, and we have this particular pronouncement or this particular statement, tripping off his tongue.
Well, thank you very much, Dibal. Good to be back. Jesus Christ, before he ascended to heaven, was talking about the Latter-day Saints who will be coming clothed in sheepskin, yet they were actually wolves. And he said that in respect to certain preachers who will actually be preaching water while actually drinking wine. Jesus Christ never mentioned Raila Odinga by name, just like Ruto did yesterday. And that borders on blasphemy. It's interesting that Deputy President Ruto certain times go to church and certain times carry his Bible, which he never reads. Because if he did, then he could not have put Raila Odinga's name alongside the Latter-day Saints that Jesus Christ was talking about. Suffice to say, I was in Kiambaa the weekend before yesterday's, and it is interesting to see that the Deputy President is following onto our footsteps to go and unwind, for whatever reason, what we may have shared with the people of Kiambaa. And that makes politics very sweet. if you become a pesetter in any political contest, then it is a testament that you are sitting in a vantage position to either clinch power or to sway the political trajectory. And that makes me very happy that the deputy president can as well go back to Kiamba, where we were with the team of Kieleweke. The impeachment motion against Deputy President Ruto is not an indictment on Jubilee as a political party,
yes,
unless Jubilee assumed new roles and new name to be Deputy President William Ruto. So if the agitation to have Ruto step aside because of certain transgressions, which we covered last week, and I may not want to go back to them, would then mean that they are transgressions of Jubilee as a political movement, then yes, we would be right to say that we as those sitting in the minority bench are poking our holes unduly onto the Jubilee trenches. You know, Deputy President William Ruto is an individual, just like me, just like my sister Alice Wahome. And if he has, you know, committed a wrong in any way, then he should carry his responsibility. He should carry his cross without dragging the name Jubilee into his political contests.
My brother cannot speak on behalf of Jubilee. I think he should speak on behalf of ODM.
Well, I'm right to say that I've never mentioned.
How would he know whether the Jubilee have the same feeling, like he's saying that he should carry his own cross? We might want to help in carrying of the cross, because this is our deputy president. May I just add and say that, I don't know, maybe I thought he's taking too long over that issue about Kiamba.
All right. We'll come back to you. We'll come back to you, Alice. Let's
we may also want to reorientate my sister that when somebody is on the podium, she waits, because she will have her second bite of the cherry. But she's new in the game.
I was giving him information. I was giving him information that is critical, because when he purports to want to speak on behalf of Jubilee, then
let's get Shema Chodo to neuter this.
The ball, maybe one of the senators should have sat between ODM and Jubilee B. But allow me to compliment Helen Obiri for carrying Kenyan flag high in Aarhus, Denmark.
Oh, that's good.
That was fantastic over the weekend. And I must say that as Kenya Diaspora Alliance, we've formed Diaspora for Sports. Last month, we were in Las Vegas for Rugby Sevens. End of next month, we will be in London for the marathon to cheer Kenyan teams and going on forward. But having said that, Debal, in terms of the case of the pot calling the kettle black, the ongoing case of the DP and the former Prime Minister, as an ordinary Kenyan, I'm just perturbed. To the extent that I think, is it that we have had leaders on the scene for too long? Maybe we should just clear the way for fresh leadership to bring fresh thoughts. I think we have leaders who have run out of ideas. Incidentally, a friend from Turkana sent me text over the weekend, supported by also a Kenyan in Australia. Let's say, it would be so nice, you know, to have a government where you have the Rastas Mwencha, the gentlemen and ladies we have on the panel, Mukisa Kitui and so on, that would give Kenyans some new, fresh hope. I think we fight over very little things, minor things, while the big things we are ignoring. Rwanda is moving ahead very fast. They are talking of artificial intelligence, drones. When we had trouble of food deliveries, I thought we would have used drones to deliver food to those affected. I think we need to think big. Until and unless we get leaders who can think big, I think we are stuck. No wonder that we are now importing more from Uganda than we are exporting. No wonder Ethiopia is doing better than us. So my point, Debal, if we stick ourselves we make Kenya just an issue between Raila Odinga and William Ruto, I think we miss the bigger picture. But that be as it may, I'm glad that people are beginning to talk about issues. And if you permit, Debal, a day passed without much notice. The 24th of March, if you allowed, and the Standard carried it, Father Gabriel Dolan on page 14, he says that particular day, March 24th, the International Right to Truth Day. I wish our leaders were telling us truth. For these days, and my brother here is mentioning the Bible, I wish I had time to go over it, because over the weekend our pastor did preach about the covenant and what God gave Moses. You remember the two pieces which had 4 laws, 4 commandments on the first stone. One talked about never use my name in vain. I think in this case both parties are guilty, both the DP and my brother here. Don't use God's name at all in vain. I wish we loved.
Did I say something?
When Christ was asked, he was telling Alice not to disrupt, and he's doing exactly that.
No, this touches
Christ,
on God,
when
so
Christ was
more
asked,
careful.
which is the greatest commandment, he said just what was said. They are only to love God with all your heart, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. I wish we could do that. Then we wouldn't have problems. But more importantly, let's think of the big picture. At one point, I hope you can allow us to talk about that day which we missed, the Day Right of Truth Day, March 24th.
Honorable Pogisio.
Thank you, brother.
Praise God.
Yeah, amen.
Hallelujah. Okay, let's hear from you.
Well, yeah, just to continue with also congratulating our athletes. I think apart from Mubiri, we had good performance there. The Kenyans stood true to their name. Just what disturbs me is, which you not captured in the papers, is looking at Kiambu yesterday. It was like we are back in the campaigns and we're about to do elections. And I think that is very, very dangerous. You saw full with T-shirts and complete with campaign materials. And all this to show what? This is all this to show what? It was very discouraging. The fact that we do want to go beyond just to show. There are two camps here. There are two things here we must not confuse. There is a fight against corruption. And if the fight against corruption is diverted into 2022 affairs, and what I realize is that there are people who are hell-bent on making sure that anything to do with corruption is diverted on Sundays to be about 2022. It should not derail the people fighting corruption. And we should never get into that trap, because that's a very, very big trap, that you come now and begin to do 2 campaigns for 2020. I hope the president's ideals to fight corruption are not going to be diverted by those kind of tactics. It's very disturbing. And I saw, much as I don't mind you're passing a message, but bringing Kenya to the situation where we think we're going to elect the president next week, completely, as if we're just about to elect. So anyway, that said, and I want to show that there is need for us.
But maybe if I could hop on that note briefly, what can you as legislators do? Because I think we can't just sit here and try and bellyache and say, why are we in the campaign mode? Can we come up with a piece of legislation that after every 5 years or after every 5 years, and we are formal election or an electioneering period, and we have a new president installed, then for the next 4 years, there is a piece of legislation until the campaigning period begins, then everyone is barred from campaigning. Could we come up with a Congo Morgan with a legislation truly? How do we solve this?
If I wanted to finish something before he goes.
Yes.
And he doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. In the neighboring countries, there is already legislation. Just in Uganda here, you can't. In Rwanda, you cannot just campaign.
You cannot just campaign.
You can't until about, is it 2 months or 3 months to elections? That's when you begin to bring out.
So we don't have such a legislation here in the country.
But anyway, the big lawyer there can say what.
So you done? We're giving you a chance here. Okongo Mogini.
Yeah, I think, Dibal, you need to, at times it's not good to compare Kenya with Uganda, especially where issues of democracy are being invoked. Yeah, because, if you look at the Constitution, and I think there is a chapter which is entitled Fundamental Rights and Freedoms. And actually it says you can't limit them. One of them is freedom to express oneself and to impart information to people. So you can really not stop people from criticizing a government that is in place, expressing their views
No,
about...
but there's a difference between criticism and pure electioneering, you know,
I mean, I'm
anecdotes.
just trying to be realistic and trying to unveil and open up the Kenyan constitution for you so that you don't have those kind of imaginations.
No, but you're using the freedom of expression in a very ambiguous way.
Yeah.
Right, because
I mean,
everyone has a freedom. Yeah?
I can tell you, Dibal, I'm not seeing that law. Alice Wahome is a lawyer, but I'm not. It's a fundamental freedom. You can't limit it. It's there.
For me to go on a campaign mode even tomorrow, I'm saying, hey, it's your fundamental, but is it for the public good? I mean, where we have the discretion of the public good, where
So
people
I
are
think
actually, just a moment, where people, they're actually fatigued by the
Debal.
constant mode of electioneering, you know, sentiments and some of these stump speeches that are given every now and then, especially over the weekend.
That you can never eradicate from our society. These discussions will always be there. The criticisms will always be there. People who want certain candidates to ascend to presidents will always be there. But I think that's not what should bother us. Debal, for me, what should bother us is how we can strengthen our democracy and our institution under the constitution that we enacted in 2010. You know, the first one is, I don't know whether there is anybody within Jubilee or ODM who would like to aspire to be the presidential candidate for either of those two parties. Because we shouldn't make it a script that the presidential ticket is for particular candidates, really. I mean, like what I'm seeing Waititu saying there is undemocratic. Anybody within Jubilee has a constitutional right to challenge the DP and say, I'm going to run for presidency under Jubilee. So I think you shouldn't be invoking the name of God and say we should be seen like Satan, because there are people within Jubilee who have a right to be ambitious. Then number two, Dibal, which should worry us as Kenyans, is how to separate politics from serious business that we want to do as a country. Like now, it's agreed across the board that we want a very, how can I say, a very passionate war in fighting corruption. And we all accept that we now have a fairly independent DPP, a fairly independent DCI, and an EACC which has just had a new CEO appointed. Now, what becomes murky is when we mix politics with a very good cause like a war against corruption. I mean, that way we lose it. And I think, honestly, what we need to do, we don't need to see the people who are in very high positions in government be the ones who are acting as hindrances, as bottlenecks in the war against corruption. That's what should worry us. Just imagine, how does the DCI feel when you see somebody very high in government saying that this war against corruption is being used for politics? And let's all be honest in this panel. Me, as I sit here, I've not seen any recommendation that says DP Ruto is going to be prosecuted for any corruption. So why should we keep on invoking this thing that there are people who want to fight the DP, there are people who want to stop his 2022 presidential campaign aspirations? It's very, very dishonest. And then it is worse that these things happen in church, where you see, you know, a priest is sitting behind there just watching as people are peddling falsehoods. I think, Dibal, if you ask me, that should speak to our moral conscience. I think we need to have the church also speak out. Tell people it's good to come and talk to us, but don't come and trade falsehoods before congregations. In church, we all can see that you're actually trying to lie to our people. Right. That is what should worry us. And then, for once, me, I don't know what is in this Raila guy. That every Sunday, people go to functions and the only name you can speak about is Raila Odinga. Now, suppose Raila is not a factor in 2022. What would you do? I've not even seen Raila come out. I mean, a member of ODM. I've not seen Raila come out and say, I'm running for 2022 election. Can we really, as leaders, can we go back to this animal called corruption that is killing our economy, that is stalling the development of this country, and have a debate around it? I wish somebody can say that this is the problem I have with the recommendation that the DCI has made. But for now, is simply conducting an investigation. And then we are politicizing the whole thing. It makes me feel sad, honestly.
But I think we are caught in a certain band and morass that we're not wallowing in and not moving ahead. Because I think all this talk about Ruto and Raila and corruption,
I think Dibala, you
we're
were
just
to
going
get back to me.
in circles.
Yeah.
I didn't want
I
us
thought
to
you
lose
had to
the
get back to
premature
me.
campaigns.
Fantastic. Just a moment. Yeah. Premature campaigns. Yeah,
I didn't want to lose that.
Yeah, we don't want.
next.
Yeah. I think we began with Alice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go sequentially.
So you remember Dibar when my brother sitting next to me started here. He said that they are setting the pace, and that they were in Kiambaa, and they feel that our presence yesterday in Kiambaa
Was to counter.
And to catch up with whatever strategy they have put in place. Indeed, His Excellency the Deputy President had been invited in Kiambaa last year. And you can laugh, you can snob about it, but the truth is, and it was public, that he had been invited. And when you're invited, normally it is very easy to find out. So yesterday was just about that, and it was a very brief session. But you will also realize that every day when you wake up, you will actually find the name of Ruto, for whatever reason, on the headlines of our newspapers, including today. That Ruto defiant. You see, even that same word, it is speaking to something. This is the same script that is in Orengo's impeachment motion. Intended, I haven't seen it, but intended impeachment motion. And it's obvious that there are some people, in my own view, that are sitting somewhere. And even yesterday, as we were in Kiambaa, you are not saying that actually the same team, his team, was in Gatanga, you know? And, you know, it seems like Murang'a County, my county, is the center of activity. But by the way, if you watch closely about what happened in Murang'a yesterday, you'll find that a clap was given only to one person. I don't want to mention, but all the others who were speaking, including his Okongomgeni's brothers and sisters, Lile did not have maybe you'll catch up later with the entourage. But what I'm saying is that there was a script yesterday, and the script was about corruption. They are talking about corruption. They are beating drums about corruption. So you expect that supporters and some members in Jubilee, because this is supposed to be Jubilee, the handshake team that was in Gatanga, you'd expect a reaction and a response. And that response is going to go on. The other thing is that actually, as even we are speaking, we need to even ask ourselves, is the country moving in the war against corruption? If it is not moving, what is the problem? Is it the systems? Is it the law? Is it politicization? Because from the beginning, and people should not hide behind names and terminologies. There is no way you can convince anybody now in Kenya that the handshake thing is not also political. The minute Raila, who is a political giant, the minute Uhuru, who is a political giant, the minute these two people greet each other, even people when they go to eat lunch in Deputy President and in people who are not even there, we will start formulating, including the media, starting to say what they were saying in secret, and there were two of them. So let's just not tell Kenyans there is a war against corruption that is going on. I think we need to rethink about the strategy. If you want to...
So there's no war on corruption that is going on,
I don't think it will. This year it may mean well. But everybody in the political scene, whichever affiliation, including Okongo Omugeni's Mulengo, they are actually trading on politics. And they want to use that to actually get some mileage in terms of politics moving forward.
Okay.
Yes. Well, Deval, neither my sister, Honorable Alice, nor myself ran Ruto's diary. So whether the invitation was extended last year or this year, whether he get crushed as a response to our visitation, is neither here nor there. But again, it is important also to note that I do not imagine that any deliberation before a church or a public rally has its veracity gauged in terms of claps. We are all here bringing out very salient points, and none has clapped for me, and none has clapped for my brother Okongo Omugeni. So I don't think we can cheapen public pronouncements under the auspices of claps. You brought in a very important point about coming up with laws that can curtail early campaigns. Well, there are those laws, but they only gag public officers from making pronouncements. And I think the idea behind this was to also stop undue influence by public officers on the outcome of any electoral process. If you read Article 260 of the Constitution, they have defined who a state officer or a public officer is. So those are the people who have been applied against their perpetuation of politics. You know, Alec, we are politicians, and we are paid to do that. So I think it will also be very difficult for us to accept that we can be gagged for 4 or 5 years before we make any political pronouncement. So that is what we've been, the mandate we've been given by Kenyans, and we must therefore do that. Those in the opposition, like myself, our main mandate is to check the excesses of the executive. And when we do that, it can as well be, you know, misconstrued to mean we are playing politics. But it is important that when fundamental issues, such as the ongoing war against corruption, is brought forward, how I wish that people would just step back and let investigative authorities play their cardinal role.
Right, thank you.
Because none of us here has the wherewithal to carry out investigations around corruption. But again, just like my brother, Honorable Okongo, has said, it is very demoralizing for a senior person such as Deputy President to punch holes on the conduct of DCI. What does that mean? That he's derailing the war against corruption. And none has, you know, put his name in the list of those who are corrupt, unless there is something he knows that we don't.
All right, thank you. We want to take a short break right now. When we circle back, of course, we continue with our panelists and the discussion moving on. You're watching This Is a Point, where we take a look at the current state of play of politics in the country, with all corruption. Is it being politicized, and how is that also acting as a tipping wire on, of course, the investigating agencies as far as seamless flowing, you know, of the work in trying to investigate on corruption as well. So you know the drill. You can hit us on Twitter. AM Live NTV is our Twitter handle, AM Live NTV, our profile name on Facebook, and 20686, our SMS portal. We'll take a short break right now. Now, a section of political leaders drawn from various parties have vowed to keep up the pressure against Deputy President William Ruto. They've also asked President Uhuru Kenyatta to sack sitting cabinet secretaries implicated in various scandals. They spoke in separate functions across the country. Take a listen.
Tafadhalini hiyo mswada ya kusema ati CID sipigane na corruption, sijui DPP asipigane na corruption. Sasa mnataka kufungia corruption kwa sanduku ili kila kitu hiyo inafanywa kwa sanduku moja. Hiyo mkatae, mimi nawaomba.
Mimi kama wakili nimeofa bila kulipwa. Nita prosecute hawa jamaa kutoka chief priest ya corruption mpaka disciples yake yote ya ufisadi.
Kama salamu za Uhuru na Raila itakuhujumu wewe na uwizi wako, na isaidia Wakenya kukaa pamoja na biashara na uchumi hinawiri, then sisi tutasema haleluya.
Pambana na ufisadi hewani, pambana nayo hapa katika ardhi, pambana nayo chini ya maji, kila mahali wapambane na nini? Ufisadi. Ndio kahawa ipate bei nzuri.
And Western Kenya leaders led by ANC's Musalia Mudavadi have criticized the recent move by President Uhuru Kenyatta allowing importation of sugar from Uganda. Mudavadi claims the decision, I should say, could completely kill the sugar industry in the region.
Mbolea itoke huko ngambo, iende ipite hii paka Uganda, ipande miwa huko, alafu wale watutumie sukari hapa. It's not possible.
You are the one who should tell us why the Jubilee government has increased the quota of sugar from Uganda to Kenya.
And we can empower governors. Governors can do that job to organize a parastatal from South Nyanza to Bungoma to Busia to take care of Ken, to get experts from Mauritius to assist us to revive sugar industry.
Right, and we continue apace with the conversation here on This Is a Point, looking, of course, at some of our stories on the war on corruption and the way it's being politicized to the recent visit by President Uhuru Museveni in the country, and of course the recent development as far as sugar importation is concerned, where we have some of the leaders that we've heard belly aching on the recent development on that yes, more sugar is allowed to be imported in the country. They say this will adversely affect the sugar industry by, of course, allowing those for competition. I'm holding court this morning with Okongo Mogeni, who is a senator from, or the senator of Nyamira. Yeah. Also, we do have with us Jared Okello, who is a member of Parliament for Nyando. We have with us Alice Wahome, member of Parliament for Kandara, and Dr. Shemo Chodo, who is a global leader of Kenya Diaspora Alliance, and also Senator Samuel Pogisio, who is a senator for West Pokot. Let's continue pace with that conversation, because I think we were losing track right from Okongo Mogeni saying that, yes, this is a freedom of speech, so we cannot derail anyone, or for 5 good years not to actually make any political statements. But premature election campaigning, if it is worked in Uganda, and you say we should not compare ourselves with Uganda because maybe Uhuru Museveni had political interest, so he was barring everyone, so that at least you have at least 3 good months before maybe the election campaigning.
Uganda is under a benevolent dictator. Yeah. That's how we should put it.
Okay.
The right of expression. I really wish, even whatever we say, we could be truthful to what we say. And we're talking about March 27th, when this bishop, Archbishop Oscar Romero, was killed in a cathedral in San Salvador. He stated, if I may quote, "Those in power today may believe that we have peace. I want to bring the point that we have a bigger problem than what we seem to be addressing." He did say that that he advised that peace is not the product of terror. Peace is not the silence of cemeteries.
So peace, when are you reading? I just want to
that's
draw it from
Standard yesterday,
Standard, yes?
page 14. Sunday Standard, page 14, an article by Father Gabriel Dolan.
Yes.
Peace is not the silent result of violent repression. Peace is dynamism. Peace is generosity. It is right and it's a duty. End of quote. Page 14. Father Gabriel Dolan, I must declare interest, is one of the people I love reading his column. We have a big problem. We had a handshake. One of the things I thought if the handshake was genuine would do was to bring the Truth and Justice Commission report in terms of implementing. If we are going to be truthful to ourselves, and this includes our leaders who speak with one side of the mouth and they actually mean the other. Let's be truthful from the word go. For us to inspire Kenyans, turn this great country around, we must be truthful in whatever we say. But I must also debate in coming to the aspect of premature campaigns. I think Kenyans have overglorified the law profession. We have too much of lawyership in our lives, to the extent that when something goes wrong in the profession, then we are all affected. Just look at what happened in the Law Society over the weekend. In a case where it's like the council decides because they want somebody to run for office, you are prepared to vary your own constitution to suit that. I was sharing with one of the panelists and says, look, the moment we allowed ICC indictees to run for office, but then my premise is that 2 wrongs don't make a right. So to that extent, I think it's incumbent upon Kenyans to start realizing, let's not over-depend on lawyers. I think we have too many lawyers, if you ask me at some point. But that can be a story for another day. But even for the legal fraternity, and this, with good reason, protect me in this regard.
Okay, let him finish. Let him finish.
That attack is
Thank
not
you.
fair.
He'll have his time to reply. The president did call upon professionals, and the Law Society in particular, help us fighting graft. I think we need to be truthful as professionals, and now talking as a professional, not as a lawyer, but as a professional. Let's be truthful. What we saw, and we're also seeing this not just in the legal, on the bar, but even on the bench, the judiciary, the Supreme Court, we have problems. To the extent that I'm tempted to think that if a survey was to be done today, Kenyans would have a little more confidence in the appeal court, in the appellate court, than in the Supreme Court. Then you start wondering, of course, other things.
Thank you.
I saw Kegoro was asking issues.
Thank you.
Finally, the point you raised of early campaigns, And where I wanted to challenge, I wanted to agree with you.
Your time is
challenge
up.
to the
Your time is up.
MPs.
Your time is up. I asked you that. Now you've actually prevaricated on so many issues. Now you're
Yes.
coming to it. Let's hear from you. You get back to it.
But
Let's hear from Pogishi.
without having to emphasize this too much, there are electoral regulations and laws and timelines. We know that. You cannot unveil a presidential candidate now. You cannot even determine who your candidate is now. Those things are provided for in the electoral timelines. So it's very unfair because, you know, there is a process for determining who runs all that. So even for the Jubilee, the challenge is you cannot predetermine, things like that, or any other party. But I think that's what we are facing as Kenya, and it disturbs the peace in the country. Let me just also say something about this Gabriel Dolan thing about the truth. Well, you're right. I mean, it all starts with how you finish your sentences. You know, if you began it on the wrong foot, I mean, you can now start trying to finish it correctly. And I think truth has been missing in our conversation. I don't think we've been telling each other the truth. Because if we were to tell each other the truth, Dibal, we know each other. We know who can actually be a good president. We know who can actually be, even in the law society, they know themselves. What I'm saying basically is that we sometimes pretend we never saw what happened. And that is a problem with the country. We have said the fight is against corruption. And somehow the fight against corruption should be the emphasis. It's not only corruption, there's a big four. We should be selling that over the weekend. But none of that is coming out. I think public officials and government should be focusing on the big four and telling Kenyans what are you going to do about this big four. But now over the weekend, what happens? It's the only thing, and maybe the media is also culprit to this, the only events reported are what happens in churches on Sunday. And not the sermon. We don't hear the sermon. Nobody knows what the preacher said on Sunday. You guys should also tell us a little bit of what the preacher said so that we can hear. But the temptation, and I'm sure that we need to rein this on churches as well, speak to churches. Churches should also be very careful that their message from Sunday should be a message of hope, a message of the sermon, not the message necessarily from politicians. Because now politicians are the ones preaching now in churches. They've taken over the pulpits.
Until they're chased away.
Yeah, I mean.
Like Jared, the way they were chased away from...
The pastor now...
In 2 churches.
Yes. The pastor now is an observer. The pastors are the observers. They're just looking from the sidelines and doing nothing. So I think we need to change that script. And let's go. I think at least I know what she's saying. But let's go.
I'm just saying that tutaendelea kupreach, lakini hata kwingine tutafukuzwa. We will be chased away in some of the churches. That's okay.
It's wrong. It's wrong to be even chased from any church. Nobody should be chased from a church.
But I think also the clergy should be stunned like that. That if you're bringing politics to the church,
they should refuse.
You should actually not come to the church in the first place, right? And the sanctity of the podium, of the pulpit, should be upheld, right? You should not just come and adulterate.
But it is the
sanctity
big,
of the podium with
big
politics.
Gifts, the big gifts the pastor is waiting for. That is what changes everything. He's waiting for this big gift. And if you go there without a gift, nobody will give you a clap because you're not going with a gift. You must go with a big gift. And I think that's where we need to separate the issues.
But Shemo Chodo, as a church elder, what have we really come to? As clergy and the laity, what is the church really turning out to be again?
Thank you, Dibal.
Especially on Sundays.
I wanted to say, I talk normally for the true
I hope
Sabbath.
I've not jumped to anyone.
The true Sabbath being...
I think I've jumped to Congo Mogi. No. Hey.
Just because of the church part.
We'll come to it.
I think first is... I don't know. First, right of reply to my good friend, Dr. Ochoda. He seems to be very bitter against the legal profession. I don't know what lawyers have done to him. Maybe somebody has given him a fat fee note for a case somewhere. But I think, look at the history of lawyers. There is no profession that has suffered in this country in trying to fight for democracy, expanded political space more than lawyers. So I think it's not fair for Mheshimiwa Ochodo to come and start attacking that. You can see there are many professions who have never uttered a word on national interest issues. But lawyers are always in the forefront. And what is sad is that some people just want to use lawyers as the punching bag. Just because lawyers met over the weekend, had an AGM, and passed a resolution that people have not been convicted. And that's what the Constitution says. It said, if you have not been convicted on any impropriety, you have a right to be a candidate in the LSK elections. I don't see anything wrong. That's not against the Constitution. I want to remind Dr. Ochodo that President Uhuru, Muigai, Kenyatta, and William Ruto were cleared to run as president and deputy president when they had serious cases in international criminal court. Worse crimes than what maybe Professor Gender is facing. And then I want to refer you to what should be worrying you, Daktari, what is in the Star of Saturday on the corridors of power. This is a profession that should worry you more than lawyers. It says, contractors from Western Kenya are protesting against the alleged award of tenders to companies associated with engineers in Kenya Rural Roads Authority. That is inside trading. I mean, you have engineers, Dibal, who are officials in Kenya Rural Roads Authority, who should be advertising tenders for various people to apply and win contracts, but they are the ones doing the contracts. That should worry you more than lawyers somewhere who are seeking to be cleared to run for an elective post. You look at the accountants, the mess we have on the auditor's report, year in, year out. That should worry you more than lawyers who are just fighting for a democratic space so that they are allowed to elect their representative in the Judicial Service Commission. I think, Diba, let's not derail from the major topic, which I think is fighting corruption so that this country can compete with our neighbors. We should be worried on what is happening in Rwanda. Yeah. You know, Rwanda is putting up a hub, an airport that will be in clear competition with our own JKIA. Look at the way Rwanda is expanding its fleet of aircraft. Kenya, we just, I think, have 32. We have been in this business for the last 44 years. Sure. Look at the rate at which Rwanda is coming up. Look at the cleanup that Magufuli is undertaking in Tanzania.
And read this headline as well. This is from Rwanda as well.
Yeah, sure. Just imagine.
Women own more land than men. This is according to the new report when it comes to gender equality as well.
I think those are the things that should worry us as leaders. That's what we should be debating this morning. Right. I think so. Let's go back to the topics that are of serious concern to this country. And I think even what I've seen in the Star, that this thing we call Roundup has been found to be causing cancer in US. And our farmers are using it day in, day out. My chairman on delegated legislation is there. There's a caption you put there about farmers being forced to use a particular fertilizer there.
Yes.
Yeah?
Compulsory.
I mean, why should you force farmers to use imported fertilizer from a particular country? I think I agree with that cartoon. That is cartel. That fertilizer there are some cartels who want to make a kill from our farmers. I agree that MV, that is a cartel somewhere there.
But this fertilizer story, we've not been, we've been here before.
Been where?
This story about the scandals around fertilizer.
Yeah, but
I'm surprised that we still...
I think now somebody, there's a new perspective,
which is
in that somebody is coming up with regulations to force farmers to use those fertilizers. That particular fertilizer.
Yeah, there are two things that have happened. There is somebody trying to develop some regulations.
With these crop regulations,
and bring to Parliament around.
Is it the crop regulation that is actually contentious?
They are saying that farmers should not use raw manure from the their farms. Composite manure has been known to be used, and that issue is very live in the villages, and farmers would like answers. But I want to just assure them that I don't think this kind of regulation can pass through the Committee on Delegated Legislation, or whether in the National Assembly or in the Senate. Yes. So I think that should. Similarly, the Dairy Board, had come up with some funny regulations on milk. That a farmer should not sell milk across to a kiosk or a hotel in the neighborhood. Basically raw milk not being allowed to sell among the communities. What are you saying?
So
because
if they don't have the pasteurizing,
it doesn't make sense, because if I milk my cow, I must
facility.
be able to take my own milk. I can't now go back to buy. And that, actually that was another cartel business, including this one. Somebody wants to process all the milk in the country and in the region. I don't know who it is, but it's another cartel. There are people coming up with regulations, basically to actually kill farmers in this country.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Both tea,
Jared.
milk, and coffee.
Thank you. I would want to, pick trajectories stemming from what my brother Kong was saying as regards clearing people to run for offices, even though they could be having certain questions around them. Just to make it clear that not just an ordinary court cleared Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto to run. It was the apex court, the Supreme Court of Kenya. And once the Supreme Court of Kenya makes a determination, it is binding on all the lower courts. Unless somebody now goes back to apply for review of that same judgment. Of course, again, there is a timeline upon which you can do that in line with the Supreme Court Act and Supreme Court regulations. But even if you do that, because I know of a matter that went before the Supreme Court seeking review, and all the parameters were met, just like it has been happening in other jurisdictions, for the Supreme Court of Kenya to move away from its original decision is like squeezing water from a stone. They would never, never do that. So whatever was done as regards people running for any office, including the determination made by the LSK over the weekend, that will be binding. And of course, the law says you have to exhaust all the appellate processes before somebody can be barred to run for any political office. Now, you talked about the, setting a rule or a law that gags, early campaigns or premature campaigns. Yes, if you go through the, I think the Political Parties Act, once IEBC has cleared one to run, they come up with a timetable upon which must be followed. And if you engage in political early campaigns after clearance by IEBC, then you are liable to some kind of fine or litigation process. So yes, there is a time set, but it is not before IEBC clears one to run. And just like one of my panelists did say, that even now we do not know who is going to run for president, who is going to run for governor, who is going to run. So it is very early. People are just but setting tempos and angling themselves for various political positions. So it will be very early in the day to even talk about gagging people. But again, the same Political Parties Act has given limits on finances. There is a particular amount of money that you cannot spend over and above what has been demarcated by the, I think IEBC has come up with a limit. But politicians being who they are, especially those running for presidency, they have always gone beyond that caveat set by by IEBC in terms of campaign financing. So how much to be spent is in law, but we never pay attention to the laws that we have enacted for ourselves in this country.
Right. Finally, let's hear from Dr. Shema Ochodho.
Yes,
still on that particular bit of electioneering.
Premature campaign. The Bala wanted to fully agree with you. And maybe this where the members of parliament would assist. If we realize that the regulations and the laws that we have are not sufficient to clamp down on premature campaigns, and I think this is a very important point you raised, Debal. It's probably only in Kenya where people campaign from January to December. From one election to another election, it's campaign mode. When do we get work done? And I think this is a serious issue. When we have Kenyans suffering, they don't have jobs, they need jobs. We need to be creating the jobs, and we expect the leaders to create that opportunity to do that. This is where the focus should be. We realize that tech companies are angling Google, Uber, Jumia, and the others to create 3 million jobs in Africa, which is possible. Of those 3 million jobs, how much or how many do we want to create in Kenya? So I think if we recognize that there's a weakness in our current laws that don't prohibit expressly early campaigns, I think a free expression is allowed in law, but the aspect of early campaigns, what we are seeing, and this happens to be on both sides, whether we are talking of Jubilee B or ODM. I think the campaign mode that we are seeing is wrong. Let the leaders concentrate what they should be doing for Kenyans. But allow me to concur with Senator Museveni. Yes, true, lawyers have been with us in the trenches. I've been in the Kenyan trenches from the time I was a student leader in '82. Moi locked us up for almost a year as student leaders with the University of Nairobi. We all know what happened in 1982. So we have been with the lawyers on the benches. But what I have a concern with is that we expect the sanctity of the law to be most held by the legal fraternity. We expect a higher threshold than this, not to say the other professionals should not be held accountable. Indeed, they need to. In fact, for the profession I am from, the informatician's profession, the ICT professions, which has not been. Last December, I'm glad for the first time, we registered a professional body, which will be doing its bit. Everybody in this country is an IT expert, in quote. We are going to clean that. But having said that, Debal, in this particular case, and I have a lot of respect for Senior Counsel Professor Ojienda, and I'm not even talking about him. But for the Law Society to say, the council to say, we are not going to look into whether he has tax certificate, help certificate. If the law said that for you to be eligible as a candidate, why do we change that law to suit a particular case? This is what I have an issue with, because then how will the lawyers do the work they have done very well, very ably over the years, look at the government, the executive on the face, and say you can't do this, while they themselves are doing it.
All right, so I don't want you to be drawn in this particular row between lawyers and the Law Society. It's true. But
an apology.
An apology for...
for saying that we are over-glorified, or we have over-glorified
okay, I don't want us to lose... No. I don't want us to lose the debate.
No, I could have said something, Dibar, on the legal profession. I think, or I just want to confirm, because I really want to join my colleague here in terms of where the Law Society is. It's one of the few societies, professions that have actually been able to keep their discipline in check because of the complaints tribunal that has gone on and processed many cases, even as we find that other professions, including construction, everywhere, engineers, architects, do not have a quick mechanism like the Law Society. But what happened over the weekend, I really don't join. I think that one I would want to actually not to support, because it is not possible for you to prescribe in an AGM what the law has prescribed. You understand what I'm saying? It is not possible. You cannot prescribe something that the law has prescribed. And the Law Society knows what they did over the weekend is actually a mess, and it doesn't anchor well.
All right.
Yeah.
I think also what should be alarming is, and should concern us, is what is on the front page of the Business Daily this morning. As far as the economy is concerned, this is sort of a profit warnings or for some of the listed firms in the Business Daily. 15 NSE firms issue alerts as profits plunge. This is 14 billion shillings. Sharp drop in earnings point to weak economic recovery and dim job prospects. It says that 15 Nairobi Security Exchange listed firms are facing 13.8 billion shillings plunge in profits in 9 months since June last year, as tough economic environment and corporate governance malpractices eat into companies' earnings. The 15 publicly traded firms have issued profit warnings in the period, with 3 of the lot coming last week, indicating that the earnings will fall by at least 25%, and you can see them here. Yes, that is top there is Kenya Power, Britam, Sanlam, EAPCC, Kenya Revenue, Housing Finance Group, and the National Bank of Kenya as well, amongst many of them as well. But this should concern us.
True.
As much as we are getting into a political, campaigning mode, how will that also portend for some of our firms and the people who want to do business in the country if we have this listing? And of course, even in the NSC for the last 10 good years, we've never had even any IPO, again, being listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Aren't you concerned? Yes. And we still are maybe, very caustic with our remarks, very caustic with our campaigning mode, very abrasive. How does that portend? Do we ever think how that is actually affecting the economy?
Well, Dibal, if you allow me to go first. There have been indicators which do not portend very well for our economy. You know about the drought that is still ongoing. We saw what is happening in Baringo and Turkana as a result of the same drought. And Kenya being a country that relies very heavily on two major things. One is agriculture to drive our economy, and tourism. And once the drought permeates, then definitely we do not get revenue that runs the economy for our country. People go without food, which is a very big problem to this country. And again, we have seen economic lump in places such as the US and Europe. Those are the people who come here to see our flora and fauna and hence give us money under tourism. So we have been affected greatly in that respect. The war against corruption should be scaled up no matter what, because the little that we even accrue as a result of what is happening in the country still ends up in wrong hands. And when they end up in wrong hands, then people tend to be overtaxed because programs must run. And when people are squeezed, literally squeezed, of those taxes to run country's affairs, at the end of the day, they do not have money in their pockets to do the other things. If you look at the paycheck of any government officer, the rate at which people get taxed into this country is alarming. People literally work for the government, yet they do not see results for monies that the government is getting. So once the country cannot make monies, either through tourism or agriculture or other interventions, the result is the Nairobi Stock Exchange, Kenya Power, I have seen National Bank of Kenya. And by the way, I'm told quite reliably that people have so chosen to keep monies in their houses instead of taking them to the banks, because firstly, the questions you will be asked, this is your money, but you have to declare so much information that then becomes a deterrent towards keeping money in our banks. And there are just a lot of issues that affect our economy, with the resultant feature of affecting the stock exchange within the Nairobi Stock Exchange program.
But of pivotal, as even we're discussing corruption, is the fact that they tease out corporate governance as the main issue. And we see most of these companies that have listed, yes, we can mention some of the contracted economic times that we're living in, but still, there is issue of corruption top on the agenda within those firms that is adversely affecting the profit and, of course, and the P&L of bottom line on this. We could talk. Top on the list is Kenya Power. We've seen what really happened with Kenya Power and heads rolling with the Kenya Power. National Bank also is on the list as well. What happened with National Bank as far as the scandals are concerned, where bosses made at least 1 billion shillings in government deposit scams? This is the issues of corporate governance that I think is very pivotal. And even last week we were discussing here about the Institute of Directors who are coming up with a bill. I think right now, which is being sponsored on the floor of the House by Honorable Chris Wamalwa, that will go full steam ahead in trying to address some of these issues that we have here as far as corporate governance is concerned.
We are all suffering because of the political environment we are working in, because there is a time when the boards of management of most of these organizations were depoliticized and very professionalized. But I think there is a concept that came up under the Jubilee leadership where you reward people who stood with you during campaigns. And we are now having a situation where most of the people who did not succeed in their political aspirations ended up joining the boards. And if you are being appointed to a job in a key sector like banking or Kenya Power, because of the political connections you have, then you have gone there to serve your masters. I think it's a high time that as a country we relooked at this again and allowed our big corporate players to be allowed to pick the boards of management professionally without making it a political thing. If you read most of the appointments in the Kenya Gazette, you'll always see a headline in the newspapers that people have been rewarded. You know, it should not be about rewarding people. It should be about competence, picking people who have some expertise in that particular field. If it's banking, let's get somebody who is tested in the field to head the banking sector. If it's Kenya Power, let's do the same thing. That's why you are seeing that one of the, as you have rightly pointed out, it is a governance malpractice. What has triggered this? That's what we should ask ourselves. And then number two, they're talking about a tough economic environment. This boils down again to issues of corruption. Because if you are not able to put in place a supportive environment for these companies to trade in, then they will never make profit. One is you make the people who are engaged in maybe undertaking some statutory supervision to be people who are endemic to corruption. I'll give you an example. Look at the number of roadblocks we now have on our roads. One of the companies named there is Bamburi. As they are moving their materials from Nairobi to Mombasa, how much money are they losing on the roads through bribery to the police officers who are on our roadblocks? How much are they using on maintenance of their vehicles because of the bad roads we have in this country? How much money are we losing in terms of bloated workforce because the people you appoint in these boards are there again forced to take cronies of some politicians as employees in those companies? Unless we deal with this issue of governance and let free our big corporate players to run professionally and independently, we will always have issues with these companies.
Pogisio. Yes, well, you know, these things also have to do with culture. In a culture of hard work and proper business, then these companies can flourish. But in a culture where quick profits is the motive, this kind of investments cannot hold. That's one thing we do. Now people like to do profits which yield 1,000 times quickly. Most of it is not going to be legal. It's not going to be money sitting somewhere waiting for shares. It's people are moving on, and people like my colleague here said, people are not taking money to the banks. There is a need for fiscal discipline and culture, which we seem not to have. Number two is our banks, on the other hand, are making profits. I think if it's not associated with government, it's making profit. You know, any organization which is here, which means there is a way in which government associated companies make losses as a default. Because of governance issues, and we know that, and because of pilferage, and so we'd like to associate ourselves with this, saying there's a pity that in the old days when you had something to invest, you invested in these markets, but now it is difficult to invest in those markets because in our culture, somebody is going to convince you that there is a better way to make money, and that's how corruption has been included in this market. And so Nairobi Securities Exchange need to reinvent themselves. Working on the old regulations and the way that they have worked, they need to be probably more creative in order to attract more investors on this side. Secondly, and I think maybe the final one I can say is that the regulatory frameworks need to be changing from time to time depending on the way the competition is in the world. Yeah, let's ask ourselves, the securities exchanges or in Europe or in Americas fluctuate this way, but at least there is hope depending on the leadership of the country, of the parties, but also depending on even pronouncements. One day you pronounce something and it affects. So let's be very careful. Sometimes the things we do, the way we act as a country, the way that our top leaders pronounce themselves can actually affect this market. It's very easy. This is a very fluid situation because I mean, we look at every day, look at any of these markets in the world. They fluctuate based on what's happening at the particular time. So a stable political situation can help. And now we need to work to be worried about this. We need to be worried about this. So it's both governance, it's culture, and also it is what the political environment is offering.
All right. So, and are you privy to yes?
I really wish, I'm glad you bring this topic of economy. I wish there was a little more time for it. But once President Clinton was asked, what's your priority? He said, economy stupid. You know, it should be all about economy. And this is what our leadership, in my view, should be preoccupying them with. There is a video footage which has gone viral of saying why we always elect incompetent men. Okay, incompetent men, usually it's men. The premise that the study was done, which found that we normally go more for people who are confident. We look more for confidence than competence. So because somebody is shrewd, is charismatic, we elect them. Look at Angela Merkel in Germany. She isn't the most inspiring and very charismatic, but look at the leadership she's giving. So to that extent, Debal, because graft has got a lot to do with why is our economy not taking. Let me say my words on graft, that I think we need to allow the DCIO, the ESCC, the DPP to do their work. I wanted to differ a little bit when Senator Okongo was saying they have independence. To the effect of their independence, I'm not too sure. But yes, they're doing a very effective job. That we cannot deny. So for me, let's allow them to do their work. For the other politicians, let's leave them. Let's not politicize. Let's not do selective prosecutions. Why can't we just allow, because we already have institutions doing that, let's let that process happen. My premise, and I've repeated this in the past, that what's going to make sure we vanquish corruption completely from Kenyan society is having a honest national dialogue. But having said that, Mheshimiwa Okello said something also very important. The aspect of taxation. Kenyans are overtaxed. There are economists who believe, let's expand the tax bracket, but reduce it. Then you would see growth, because companies are taking, there's plight of companies, investors. In fact, even because of this uncertainty and the fights we see every day, there are investors who are fear coming into Kenya. So why can't we stabilize the ship? And my advice again for free to the leadership of this country, the president. Kenyans will remember him if he puts food on the table of those who don't have. They'll remember him for long for that. We remember Kibaki for turning around the economy. That's why I was saying economy is stupid. Finally, something worries me about the stock exchange. You know, and I remember once in the past talking with a senior government official that over 75% of the assets at the stock are foreign owned. Really? And this leader was saying he doesn't see anything wrong with that. That Kenyans own only 25% of the assets at Nairobi Stock Securities Exchange. That's something that should worry us. How do we revive the economy? But again, as I said, I hope one day we can have a little more time on that topic of economy.
Okay. Alice.
Okay, I think I may not be an expert in this particular space, but looking at the issues, the reflection here is that we are going down, down now. The arrow is going down, down, down. And these are the major public institutions or organizations in this country that where majority, actually the ordinary Kenyan has bought shares. So that also doesn't spell very well. It means Kenya, have lost shares in National Bank, they have lost shares in Baburi, they have lost shares in Housing Finance, also lost shares in, even in Kenya Airways. Kenya Airways, when they issued the first share, everybody went there because they believed it was doing well. Look at how it is now doing. But I think in terms of corporate governance, there could be something to do with it, because it means by the time you are posting losses, there is either a mismanagement problem or theft or basically incompetence. All those factors can actually come into play. But also the political angle also weighs in. The way we are managing our country, the way we are managing our politics, as you said, could also have a big issue on this. And because also these people also play with other bigger institutions or other institutions outside the country, other trading partners. You see also cases of stock are now not localized. There is a lot of shares being bought across the boundaries on internet, and it is quite free and easy, and there are better returns outside the country. So, and I think we need maybe to start doing business differently. But I would agree, yes, we need to appoint people with the relevant competencies in these offices. And it doesn't mean that the political heads or the presidency cannot appoint. But, we should have a pool of all these people, because everybody is entitled to a job in this country, irrespective of your political affiliation. But because you also don't want to be delayed by people who don't believe in your dream, people who do not buy into your mission, and and therefore, I think that the Institute of Directors have, for a long time, been training. In fact, they do trade. All these institutions take and they pay for their directors. But you see, there are some who are untrainable. I mean, we know, we have seen those risks when they come. But, we can have better data, better persons where the presidency can actually draw from. And I think that's just a matter of structure and processing.
What actually he was talking about, people being political appointees in some of his parastatals in the country, some of his agencies in the country, as well as chairman. That particular bill, the IOD bill, I think also will seek to address that. That yes, it's a matter of competence and not political expediency. That if you've lost in this, or you've been ousted in one farm, then we find you to be an ambassador of our country.
I said you can actually, if you are mindful about the governance in this country, I think you can combine both political expediency and competence. Correct. And that's why I'm saying the Institute would do good. And I don't think we are lacking in law. People who are trained in corporate governance, even now as we speak, are very many actually, but we need the law. Because I have gone through the entire course, and I'm sure maybe most of the people seated here have gone through, through that course. So what I'm saying is that it's possible to combine the two, but it's how we are doing our business that is not really working, And even who processes these papers for the presidency, why can't they go for people who will inspire confidence? But also, we are nowadays preaching at the top leadership. We are preaching too much.
Right. Even
hopelessness. You need to inspire a nation. You can't wake up. And I think the media has something to do with it. Also need to change. You can't wake up every morning to preaching, hopelessness. You need to inspire the nation by some better things also, because I believe there are still other things that are happening. But every morning now the media is feeding us, and we tend to believe largest population tend to believe the media like Kafeno, so.
But you see, all this, they lead up to what we are talking about, even what is on the front page of a Daily Nation. Because yes, if we have NSC farms issuing profit warnings, some of listed farms there, of course, these are families will get affected.
A problem, yes.
Look at what the menace we are having on the front page of a Standard as well. Depression in the country, Kenya's new health disaster. And it's appalling when they say that Kenya ranks the 6th most depressed people in Africa. 6th most depressed people in Africa.
So that's why I said, every morning if we wake up to this, I think the entire population will be depressed.
But why shouldn't we speak the truth?
I think we need to speak the truth, but we need also to find ways of, people, America was talking about hope. And you can feed on hope and change the country.
Well, but we just want to see the causative factors, how these things cascade and feed into one another. When we have wrong politics, we have profit warnings. When we have profit warnings, we have families which are affected. Yeah. And when we have families which are affected, of course, we'll have people who are depressed within these families. Because, first of all, a financial, of course, freedom is a key factor. Yeah, in any happy nation, you'll find if these things they can actually easily afford, then we'll have a healthy nation. But we are not seeing how our politics, the feisty fighting that we have on the ground, will actually cumulatively affect, Mama Mboga, or the mother and the father, or the children in the house. Jared.
Well, thanks, Dibal. For the first time, let me be in sync with what my sister Alice has said.
For the first time?
For the first time.
In the longest time.
But this is the first time we are sharing.
She has acquired a new title, the Diary Lady of Team Tangatanga. She just confirmed to me that she runs the diary.
I don't understand what is his problem, but speak about your
But anyway, what I would want to say is that any country, having come out of a prolonged election process or electoral process, is susceptible to such economic shocks. Kenya, you remember we had 2 presidential elections in a row. And this, apart from the mere fact that it affects investors or investor confidence, it also uses a country's wealth in order that elections can be carried out. So these are results of prolonged election process. But even when the handshake did take place, that was meant to bring down the political temperatures, somebody emerged campaigning for 2022. And just as one of the panelists did allude, you would imagine that there will be presidential elections last year if you saw what happened in Kiambaa, where I was last week. So economy is always very much afraid of happenings around charged politics. So I would suggest, therefore, that we need to bring down our political rhetorics so that the investors can have confidence and the country can enjoy some semblance of peace. Now, many farms are now staring from what has been captured by this newspaper, are staring at liquidation, which will then lead to shutting down of certain farms. And the results of shutting down a farm is joblessness. And you just show depression as the headline of the standard newspapers today. So it has so many underlying issues for any country that does not properly handle its economy very well. Now, I want to bring the point where I'm in agreement with my sister Alice. We also need responsible journalism. You remember 9/11 in the US, even though many people died, we still don't know how many there were. Nobody, not a single body, was showed to the public. So certain times there could be something happening truly wrong in a country, but responsible journalism would tone it down so that it does not create fears into the citizenry and into the investors. And a country such as ours that depends on tourism, one simple thing, including the air crash in Ethiopia, would affect it in such a big way. So journalism or journalists should also help our country at least paint a better picture of what we are. We have had every time and again increased levies by national and county governments. And when these levies are applied on the people and people are taxed, overtaxed, then number one, they would fear to even continue investing. And number two, because of overtaxation, they make less profits and hence quitting the business in its entirety. So these are matters that we have to look at. Again, missed collection, missed collection taxes. The target set by Kenya Revenue Authority, many a times they fall short of it. And when they do that, that is when the president gets into a plane to go to China to negotiate for more concessionary loans. And these loans must therefore be paid. And when the loans are paid, we are even taxed the more so that these loans can be, the obligations can be respected. So it's a whole lot of issues. Finally, boils down to ethnicity. You look at this company that is, this government organization that is around Aror and Kimwarer Dam, and you look at the composition of directors in that farm. They all come from one community. And I'm not saying that they may not be competent, but there are other more competent Kenyans out of that particular confine of that small ethnic community. So let us also look at, and the Constitution has paid a lot of credence to regional balance. So let us be professional, just as my brothers are saying here, in running public affairs. The mere fact that all government sectors are losing monies or are not making profits cannot be used as an argument. So let us also professionalize parastatals, other government agencies, so they can also make money for the nation.
Just one point, Debale. The only point I think is there is also a problem within government. And one of the concerns these companies are raising is that the government never pays. Right. It is contractors, yeah. It is suppliers.
Delay.
And I think the economists will tell you that the biggest person to do business with is government. By 2018, just count governments alone, owed suppliers and contractors 108 billion. So if there is no business going on, if there is no trading, there is no payment, there is no way KRA will meet its revenue, because suppliers and contractors need to be paid before they can remit their taxes to KRA. So I think we also need some integrity from government. If you contract somebody, is your supplier, he has supplied, for God's sake, pay them. That's how you build confidence. amongst the business family.
Right.
Yes.
We need to streamline that particular area. We'll come to you, Shemochodo. The issue of, because we know also KRA, we had extension of the current Director General, because I think there was no appropriate candidate, so to speak, according to the politics of the day, that the person that was to take over was not really, snugly fitting that position. And we had a circular from the head of public service, yes, to actually extend the term of the current Director General. Now the term that is getting to an end, I want you just to juxtapose this with the corporate governance that is coming to the fore, is with many parastatals that we're having problems with on the listed firms as well. Maybe we can also shed light on that. How then will this particular, still back to the directors of Institute of Directors Bill, address this particular issue, where you don't have any latitude to extend, the chairmanship of or the leadership of any person within a parastatal? Yeah. I think that is very key, and this will come to the floor for us.
Right.
Briefly as a winding up.
When I look at the list you have up there, it affects both public organizations as well as private organizations, because I can see a number of private, Britam, Sanlam, and so on. So it's not only public. But I would find it very difficult to believe that suitable candidates cannot be found for any position in Kenya. In fact, there are certain positions I see foreign nationals owning and holding, and I keep asking myself, you mean we can't find competent Kenyans to do this kind of work? But having said that, I wouldn't want to focus just on KRA alone. If I was today, and I'm being careful to use the word was, because one day I may just be head of state of this country. If I was one today, what I would do is I would dissolve the entire cabinet, and do something unusual. Allow eligible Kenyans to apply. Even do headhunting for competent Kenyans who would run the government, who would help the president to run the government. That's what I would do. And then use that all the way down to even PSS. There are many competent Kenyans, both within and outside the country. But allow me, Debal, to agree with the two colleagues on the aspect of pleading with the media also to overblow the positive stories. Look at the report of the Auditor General, Makweni and I think Nyandarua, being given a clean bill of health. We need to over-glorify, in my view, because it's so rare you find county governments doing that. Look at what the sport people are doing. Look at what Tabichi did. There are so many. Look at what Gor Mahia did. I think the plea is, okay, let's cover the negatives, but let's also expose the good that's happening, because there's a lot that's good that's happening in the country.
Let's just get to our closing remarks at the beginning of the Honorable Pogisio.
Well, thank you very much. And first, I nearly forgotten to congratulate colleague David Musila for publishing his memoirs. It's a very rare thing that we have memoirs anymore, and I think we should encourage a lot of people who have the large bodies of language, of knowledge, that they should publish memoirs, and congratulations for that. It's controversial, but at least he made it known that he could. But Dibal, we cannot lose this fight. I think as leaders, our economy is the most important thing for the country, and we should really try and rally back the economy on the straight and narrow. That's what I'm saying.
Right, thank you. Right, Alice Wahome.
I think I would, at this particular time, some of the problems right now maybe the government is facing is that it is lacking opposition, and we have always said that the role of the opposition is to put the government in place to check. And right now, actually, the Honorable Raila Odinga needs to take up his position actively, but also there is a possibility that he could resign, because the Constitution is very clear as to how we run the government. And if we miss those particular, and running the government is not fighting, and we are not talking about fighting. I think that there is something that the country, this particular term, will miss in terms of even leadership in the House.
Thank you.
Because we are finding that even bad bills, maybe now there would have to be opposition within the government.
Thank you.
It doesn't really make sense when we have a constitution that speaks different.
Right, Jared, 30 seconds.
Well, at the moment, Raila Odinga is the high representative for AU in matters infrastructure. I don't know why he should resign. on that particular position.
Not on that, I said in terms of opposition
And
leader.
secondly, he's now the President Uhuru's friend. I don't know whether he should resign from becoming Uhuru's friend. But you know, that is not important. The imbalanced trade that we have in the country at the moment, where we have more imports than exports, that hence affect our dollar rates. And everything that we buy from abroad must be paid in dollars. So on a very small thing that should actually be very cheap here, because we have bought it in dollars, we therefore tend to spend a lot more. We need to fully engage in rain-fed agriculture. Because you know, the rainfall has become so unpredictable, the global warming is unbearable.
Thank you.
And I thank you.
Closing remarks, 30 seconds.
Yeah, it would be good if my sister Alice Wahome can introduce a bill in the National Assembly, which will allow the official opposition to have a seat in Parliament. Then he can play effectively his role as the head of the opposition. That is welcome, and I hope it can be actualized the sooner, as soon as possible.
My closing one, this week, Gor Mahia is meant to be playing at Kasarani. But I also appreciate Kenya Association of Manufacturers is meant to be there. I am hoping that a solution is found, the two sit down, because it's unusual. It's one of the very few moments when we are seeing quarterfinals of the CAF being played in Kenya. So let's give that priority, but also find suitable place for KM to exhibit their goodies.
Thank you. Thank you for a very good discussion we've had this morning, and also for your contribution. Just to read one or two as we're winding up. We have Ken Opondi saying, sure, the DPP versus DCI struggles hard to redeem Kenya's image, but politicians take cover with minor excuses. We need action, not narratives. We have Abdallah Mudambo saying we are in a country where the poor are preaching peace and politicians rich are beating war drums. A country where the leadership class are headliners full of unashamed insults, vitriol, and common man shouting dialogue. God save us. Those are reactions also from social media. Thank you for your valued company. You've been watching This Is a Point. Living with Us is up next. Have a lovely day.